I've had the Fanatec Clubsport DD Plus for almost a year now, and I want to do a review to go over whether or not I think this is the best sim racing direct drive wheel you can buy in 2025. Now, Fanatec has been in the sim racing industry for a while. I know they've been going through a couple of issues on their side. They were just bought by Corsa recently, so they have good management on their side when it comes to making their products. But in the sim racing space, they are quite well known, although they have started to lag behind a couple of the competitors in the more recent years. They are still looked upon as the key leaders in the sim racing space. I got into sim racing a couple of years ago because of Drive to Survive on Netflix, and I bought the DD1 from Fanatec alongside the pedals and everything like that, and I really kind of fell in love with the ecosystem and also of course with sim racing. When the Clubsport DD Plus came out in November 2023, it was a big step because it had been a while since they had released a kind of strong-ish, very torque-heavy direct drive in a while, especially since the launches of DD1 and DD2. So it was a big deal for a lot of people that were following that ecosystem and wanted a new Fanatec direct drive wheel. So before I got the DD Plus, I had the DD1 from Fanatec. Fanatec DD1 has 20 Newton meters of torque force, whereas the DD Plus has just 15. And I will kind of go over why that 15 actually kind of feels like 20, if not higher at times. But looking at that, it doesn't make sense to kind of get a DD Plus. The key reason I wanted to get a DD Plus was its PS5 compatibility. I know a lot of people out there that want to get into sim racing, but might just have a console, and the DD Plus might be the perfect place to start. First thing we should get out of the way is that sim racing is a pretty expensive hobby. The DD Plus itself is 1,000 USD, that's not including shipping or tax. I'm based in Canada, so when it comes to shipping, all that stuff, of course, there's an added cost, and there's tax and duty that you need to pay once the actual product comes to you in Canada itself. Now that's just for the wheelbase itself. You have to look into the pedals, you have to look into the wheels, which are all between $400, $500, $600 range USD. And then of course, when it comes to actually placing this on something, you need to have a sim rig, anything like that, where you can actually kind of lock it in. You can't really clamp it onto a table, especially with this kind of torque. Most of you that are watching probably know all this already, but I just wanted to put that out there in case, you look at this and think that why am I recommending a wheelbase like this when it's so expensive and it's a very high cost? In the grand scheme of things, in the sim racing kind of space itself, this is a very reasonable price for what you're getting. Now for this review, I'm going to be going over a couple of games that I play. The ones that I play the most, I'm not going to cover every single game, alongside the QR2, PS5 compatibility, and also any other additional features that they might have with DD Plus and whether or not it might be worth your time. So let's move over to the sim rig. Now that we're on the sim rig here, you kind of see the whole setup that I have. I have my Next Level Racing rig and everything. I've got my wheel, my Formula wheel, and I've been playing a bunch of Assetto Corsa Evo for a while since the game came out. Of course, one of the key things that I like about this is that it has 50 Newton meters of torque. And one of the things that the DD Plus does is that it gives you 15 Newton meters of torque for a consistent amount of time. So typically with a lot of the DD1 and some of the older gen direct drive wheels, you would essentially get a specific spike in the torque level, and it would just kind of go back down because it can't hold it at that point. With this, the idea is that it's able to hold it at that point. So it's able to make the feeling of driving a car a little bit more realistic. It's able to kind of give you more information on the road in terms of texture, stuff like that. Now I'm saying all of this But in my opinion, in all honesty, when it comes to, you know, having used a DD1 and now using the DD Plus, I don't notice that much of a difference. There are certain things like the wheel feeling a little bit smoother. In some of the older DDs or direct drives, you get like this weird like notchy kind of a feel, kind of like this. In this case, it does kind of feel a little bit smoother. You won't like notice it too much, but that was the kind of the key thing that stuck out. The interesting thing though is that even though the DD1 is supposed to be stronger than this technically in terms of that number, this feels as strong, if not stronger at some points. I have kind of put it all the way at high in terms of feedback level, obviously up to a point, because after, you know, if you just push it up all the way to 11, it's a little bit not fun anymore. You're just kind of trying to like hurt yourself at that point. But I'm just kind of looking at it in terms of like, okay, keeping it at the specific level that I would use the DD1 at, or I used to. It basically feels the same. Like I said, sometimes, you know, it just feels like I am kind of feeling that pull a little bit more, or the same amount for a more consistent amount of time. But overall, it's not something that you will notice unless you look for it. Now, I mentioned Assetto Corsa Evo. This is a game that just came out. It's a new Assetto Corsa game, which is one of the biggest sim racing games out there. And playing this game in Assetto Corsa Evo, which is what I have on right now, it's great. I mean, it feels really good. The game, of course, looks awesome. But in terms of just the force feedback and everything like that, and it is an early access game, it's pretty great. Anytime I go up close to the curb, I can feel every little bunch of that curve, whatever you call it, the little rings or whatever kind of hits your tire. When I'm kind of going and I feel like I'm losing the rear, when I'm turning too quickly, I can feel that. I can catch my rear. You know, when you're really pushing it to the limit, when you're really pushing yourself, getting up to the high speed, the top speed to a degree, you know, you do feel the wheel shake a little bit, and it does kind of give you that feedback of, you know, okay, like let's kind of break down over here. Let's not break down, but let's brake over here, or let's slow down, because you're not gonna make that turn otherwise. And it does kind of add to that immersion. Now, of course, the other game that you have to kind of talk about when it comes to anything sim racing is iRacing, which is the most popular online sim racing game out there, even more than Assetto Corsa, I think, at this point. Same thing with this, you know, obviously I use Fanalab, which is a software from Fanatec that kind of has its assigned set of settings that you can kind of use. It kind of auto assigns it when you start up a game, which is really cool. And when you switch between games, it switches the settings at the same time, so you don't really need to do anything. You can tweak your own stuff, of course. You can also tweak stuff in the game itself in terms of force feedback, different things that you want to do. I'm not very technical, so I usually typically have to kind of go online, see what other people are using, or of course just kind of on my own when I'm playing the game, notice that, hey, you know what, maybe I can turn this up or turn this down to kind of, you know, just match my setting and match kind of what I need. But in this thing, the same thing as well. Everything kind of feels really good. I will say that Assetto Corsa Evo, it being a newer game, I guess, with a different engine, it does feel a little bit more responsive when it comes to the wheel. Like it just feels a little more immersive. I'm assuming that, you know, maybe the engine they use or the details that it will kind of communicate is just a little bit better. iRacing is a very old game at this point, but that doesn't take away from the overall feel that you get when you play this game. You still get the feel that you want when it comes to turning and making sure your wheels aren't slipping. When it comes to going at a high speed, you know, you get that feel of like, okay, I gotta, you know, slow down a little bit, otherwise I'm not gonna make that turn. Or at the same time, when you're really near other cars and you kind of brush up against them, you kind of get that feedback in your wheel as well, which is obviously great. It's not great when you get crashed into, but it is great in that moment because it does give you that kind of rush, that kind of feel that, okay, I am actually racing against someone. And for Gran Turismo 7, you'll see the B-roll playing of me playing Gran Turismo 7. It is pretty quick in terms of it being set up and you just kind of jumping into the game. It recognizes the Fanatec wheel and the base itself. It's pretty easy to switch to PlayStation 5 mode, so when you have the Fanatec base set up, you can either go into PC mode, PC Compatibility mode, PS4/PS5 mode, and then PS5 mode. So in the case of me, with me having my Gran Turismo 7 on my PS5, I switch over to PS5 just by clicking the power button until I get to PS5, which is a very dark blue color. And then, yeah, immediately it recognizes the wheel. I'm able to navigate the menu, all that stuff. And then same thing when it comes to jumping into the game. I kind of go online to figure out what setting works best based on what people are saying, and then kind of tweak the setting according to what I like. And then when you play the game itself, everything is great in terms of the immersion, the feedback you're getting good amount of details when it comes to playing, driving certain types of cars, when you hit the track, when you hit the curves, when you turn, stuff like that. So it is pretty immersive that way, and it is kind of like, imagine when you're playing Gran Turismo 7 on the DualSense controllers. The controllers do add an extra level of feedback. They give you haptic feedbacks on the controller itself, the feedback triggers as well. Just imagine that kind of transferring over onto a wheel. Obviously, it's a little bit more immersive because you have a wheel in front of you, so you feel like you're in the car. But it is kind of taking that almost one-to-one to a degree. So if you're looking for something like that and you want that in Gran Turismo 7, from what I understand, from what I know right now, Fanatec and I believe Logitech are the only direct drive wheels that are PS5 compatible. I know other wheels, you can find ways to kind of make them work. It's not easy. There's a couple of things you gotta buy. There's some certain things you gotta bypass, all this and that. When you want to just have something that you just plug and play, this DD Plus and of course the Logitech wheel, those are kind of the go-to. And in my opinion, Fanatec Wheelbase and everything, the ecosystem just kind of trumps the Logitech Wheelbase and that system a little bit, at least for the moment. I know they're going to be coming up with more stuff in the future, who knows, but at the moment Fanatec still sticks out. The other cool thing is, if you have multiple wheels like I do, I have a Formula wheel and I also have a circular round wheel which I use for Gran Turismo 7 a lot of the times. I got it at the Gran Turismo 7 bundle with this wheelbase. And it's really easy to kind of take it off and on. You can just kind of do it on the fly, just like this. You're just going to press on to this QR2 release, bring it out, and then you can just kind of pop it back in like so, and you're done. In the past, the QR1, the quick release that I used to use on the DD1, it was not as simple. You would have to kind of release like a lever on the back. You gotta like unchain it. I don't know what you call it. Just kind of like unscrew it a little bit, pull it, and you have to kind of jerk it off. You would hit it on your face, all that stuff. It was terrible. It was pretty bad. But now at least, with this QR2, it does allow you to have multiple wheels just kind of lying around, and you can just kind of switch it on the go and just jump into the new different car that you want to play. One cool thing I will say about this, having had a DD1, is that this has passive cooling. So with the DD1, there was a fan that would kind of help with the cooling of the system. And there were times where if I left the DD1 on for a while, or sometimes I would actually forget to turn off the DD1. That's happened a couple of times. When I would come back and I'll put my hand on the wheelbase itself, it will be pretty warm. Obviously, maybe that's my unit. Maybe it's not, doesn't happen to everyone else. But that was something that I noticed. Obviously, everything was still fine. With the wheelbase worked as expected. But that was kind of a concern with the DD Plus, with this Clubsport DD Plus. It has passive cooling. So there's no fans or anything like that. But surprisingly, without those fans, without any motor, anything like that kind of running in there, it's going to help with the cooling itself. It actually is extremely cool. Today, before I recorded this video, I forgot to turn this off. I had turned this on to test a couple of things out for the video itself, and I completely forgot to turn it off. I came back and I was about to set this up, and I looked and I was like, wait, the light is still turned on. And I was like, oh my god, I left it on the whole night. I put my hand on it, completely cool. It did not even feel like anything happened. Of course, it wasn't being used, right? But with the DD1 and some of these older direct drives, that's kind of a concern. It does run hot. It's just the older motor or the older way of kind of running these direct drive wheelbases. But with this, you will never need to, at least from what I've experienced so far in this year, you won't need to worry about that. So while we're here, why don't we discuss a couple of things that are not the best. One of the things that they kind of sold everyone on is what they call Fullforce Feedback. Fullforce Feedback is kind of their way of True Force, which is a Logitech thing. Basically, it's supposed to be able to kind of give you more information that you've ever gotten on a track in your car. From my understanding, what it's doing is, and I could be completely wrong on this, it's basically using the haptic feedback kind of technology you get in things like the DualSense controller and kind of communicating that onto your wheel itself. They have actually put a demo out onto their software itself, so you can just kind of test it out as to how it feels. And it does kind of feel like that. It feels like you're basically getting that haptic feedback kind of a feel onto your wheel itself. At least in my opinion, it's not making anything more immersive, anything like that. It's just kind of adding an extra layer. If it's there, it's cool. It does add to it a little bit, but if it's not there, I'm not gonna miss it. Even with all that being said, no game so far supports it. We've had this for over a year now, And still, I think iRacing was one of the first few ones that we thought would get it, because that was kind of what they were showing when the Clubsport DD Plus was coming out. But you know, iRacing doesn't have it, Assetto Corsa Evo doesn't have it, Automobilista, any game, all these games do not have it so far. The other thing is Fanatec Shipping. This is a known thing with them. This is something that was brought up before they were bought by Corsair. And if you're someone like me that lives in Canada and you're not based in the US or in Europe, where I believe all the manufacturing stuff happens for Fanatec, when it comes to getting your stuff, you might need to wait for a while. I had to wait about 3 to 4 weeks for my Clubsport DD Plus. I know some people in Canada got this in a week or so. This is just a situation with how they're manufacturing, their warehouses were kind of handling orders coming in. So you could be lucky and get it really quickly, or you could be unlucky like I was. Again, it's not a big deal. At the end of the day, you're getting your product, so it's not a big issue. I know there are people that didn't get their product, stuff like that. So you gotta complain in that case, which is of course a hassle. But that is something that you need to kind of consider when it comes to buying Fanatec. Then of course it's the price. This is 1,000 USD for just the base itself. So just the base, just looking at that, and let's say you already have a bunch of Fanatec wheels, stuff like that, 1,000 USD is still a lot of money. If you're already invested in the ecosystem and you might have a CSL DD or something like that, or maybe even a DD1, and you want something that's compatible with the PS5, price-wise, this might not hit you in the same way. If you're completely new into the Fanatec ecosystem, you're looking at this video and you're saying, I want to get into sim racing, you were investigating or looking into this specific direct drive wheelbase, 1,000 USD is quite a lot, especially if you're just getting into this. And I know I have no right to be saying this because I jumped in straight into the DD1, but looking back, I do wish I took a smaller step. I went with Logitech, I went with something smaller, maybe just one of those belt-driven wheels, see how I liked it, and then kind of moved into direct drive. Especially now with a lot of competition out there with Simracing and SimMagic, Assetto. There's so many options. Like I said, this is, at least in my opinion, the best option you have. And I haven't gotten a chance to use Logitech, but just because of the wheel options that you have, the types of pedals that you have available, and the ecosystem itself, I do feel this is the best wheelbase that you can get for your PS5 at this moment. But that doesn't mean that you should not be looking at other options when considering which one to pick up. Talking about the ecosystem, it's kind of like Apple. You kind of get locked in. You basically will want to buy Fanatec wheels and everything that you kind of see on their website, and their wheels are very, very expensive, and many times it's for stuff that honestly looks like cheap plastic. You might see other wheels out there like SimMagic and stuff that are doing some really cool stuff with a really cool screen on their wheel, itself. There are ways to make those types of third-party wheels work with your Fanatec wheelbase. Again, it's just looking at it in a way as something being plug and play. It is not something that is plug and play at that point. If you bring in anything third party, there is a bit of work that you need to do. But if you're like me, who is just wanting to kind of have everything that's kind of plugs in, starts working, you will be locked in. And when that means that when you're locked in, you will be in a situation where you'll have to spend a lot of money just to get a round wheel. You have to spend a lot of money just to get a Formula wheel. And sometimes they look okay-ish, they don't look amazing, they feel great and all that stuff, that's fine. But that's kind of the thing that you'll be locked into. And another con in a way is the Fanatec software itself, the tuning menu. The tuning menu, at least for someone like me who first got into this, like I have no idea what any of that stuff means. And I'm sure, when you're getting into sim racing or you're investing all this money, maybe that's the expectation. Maybe the expectation is that you know all of this. But for someone that's getting into this sport or into this, gaming genre, you want to be guided a little bit. And I wish the tuning menu did kind of do that, of letting you know what this does to your car, what this does to the wheel itself, so that it would just make you, over time you get familiar with everything, which is fine, but it lets you tweak things and make things more custom to what you like without you having to go on Reddit or go on Fanatec forums. Even with all the cons that we just discussed, the wheelbase at the end of the day does work pretty well with PS5. It's pretty plug and play, and same thing with your PC. And when it comes to the actual immersion of using the wheelbase, playing any sim racing game on it, it gives you that immersive feeling. It gives you what you're looking for. It gives you that information that you need when you're racing against people, against AI, whatever it may be. And it also kind of makes you feel like a race driver. When it comes to the price, it kind of slots into three different types of people. Either you're a beginner that's very new to the space and are not sure if you want to go the direct drive route, or you want to get a belt-driven wheel, the stuff that you see on Amazon for Logitech, stuff that. In that case, I would recommend getting a Logitech wheel or a belt-driven wheel that you see on Amazon, around 200 to 300 USD, something like that. Something to just get started, see how you feel, see whether or not you actually kind of like the sim racing genre. Obviously, then there's the other part where if you're a beginner and you have decided that no, your first sim racing wheel setup is gonna be a direct drive wheelbase, in that case, I will 100% recommend getting a Clubsport DD Plus. It's 1,000 USD, but if you're in that mind space where you want to spend this money and buy something like this will give you the best bang for your buck. It is, at the end of the day, giving you a really, really high level of torque. It has an overall great ecosystem, even though I might not like all the wheels that Fanatec has to offer right now. And at the end of the day, when it comes to actually using the product with your PS5 with PC, it is seamless and it feels great, and it will give you the information you want. Now, if you're someone that is already has a direct drive, maybe you have a DD1, maybe you have something from SimMagic or SimCube, that's kind of where it gets a little bit harder. At 1,000 USD, this is still a pretty good deal at that point, especially if you're already in the direct drive space. You can kind of understand that this pricing for what you're getting is pretty good. But then it depends on whether or not you actually care about the PS5 compatibility. If I honestly did not want the PS5 compatibility, my DD1 would have been perfect. That 20 Newton meters of torque. I know they don't sell those anymore at Fanatec, but that was kind of perfect in terms of the overall immersion or anything like that. I don't feel like the DD Plus has added anything since I was using DD1. And same might go for if you're using the CSL DD or a SimCube or SimMagic, stuff like that. I'm not sure if DD Plus will kind of give you that big jump that you're looking for. If you're someone that wants the PS5 compatibility because maybe you're really getting into Gran 7 and you want that wheel, this is honestly the best kind of direct drive wheelbase you can buy. I hope you enjoyed that video. I know it's been a while since I last posted. I will be posting more often. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, stuff like that, and leave a comment if you didn't like the video. Anything to kind of get your ideas, get your thoughts.